Before a word is spoken, before a decision is made, before a boundary is tested, there is already a signal moving between two people. That signal is not logical. It is energetic. And this is where many men misunderstand attraction in relationships. They think strength is something proven through effort, explanation, or performance. But weakness is detected long before any of that. It is felt. A man's inner state broadcasts continuously. His nervous system speaks through posture, breathing, eye contact, pacing, and stillness. If there is tension inside him, fear of loss, fear of disapproval, fear of being alone, it leaks outward. He may try to hide it with confidence, humor, or dominance, but the body cannot lie for long. And women, especially in close relationships, are highly attuned to these subtle signals. This sensing is not mystical or magical. It is biological and psychological. Humans evolved to read safety, threat, certainty, and instability through nonverbal cues. When a man is internally grounded, his presence feels calm. When he is internally fragmented, his presence feels unstable. That instability is interpreted as weakness, not because he is flawed, but because his center is not settled. Weakness often shows up as over-adjustment. He changes his tone depending on her mood. He rushes to explain himself when tension appears. He anticipates reactions and preemptively softens his position. These behaviors seem considerate on the surface, but energetically they signal fear. Fear of conflict, fear of displeasing, a fear of losing connection, and fear collapses attraction faster than disagreement ever could. Another form of weakness is emotional leakage. This happens when a man processes his uncertainty out loud without containment. He speaks every doubt, every insecurity, every fluctuation in confidence as it arises. While vulnerability is important, uncontained vulnerability creates emotional burden. Instead of feeling anchored, the relationship begins to feel unstable. The woman may not consciously articulate it, but she feels it in her body. Something is off. What makes this especially damaging is that weakness does not need repetition to be detected. One moment of energetic collapse can shift the dynamic. One instance where a man abandons his frame to seek reassurance can plant a seed of doubt, not about his character, but about his solidity. And once that doubt exists, attraction no longer feels safe or expansive. This is why words do not fix energetic problems. A man can say all the right things and still feel weak. He can communicate intentions clearly and still feel uncertain. The body listens before the mind does. If his inner world is chaotic, no amount of verbal clarity will stabilize the dynamic. Strength, on the other hand, is quiet. It does not rush to be understood. It does not seek immediate relief. A strong man allows discomfort without panicking. He allows silence without filling it. He allows misalignment without negotiating his worth. That calm tolerance signals inner authority, and authority is felt instantly. Importantly, this does not mean men must suppress emotion or become emotionally distant. It means emotions must be integrated rather than leaked. Felt internally, processed privately, and expressed intentionally. Containment is not repression, it is mastery. When a man develops this mastery, his presence changes. Even in uncertainty, he remains steady. Even in desire, he remains centered. Even in conflict, he remains grounded. And that grounding communicates strength without effort. Attraction begins not with what you do, but with what you are holding inside. Long before attraction becomes a conversation, it is a transmission. Your nervous system is constantly communicating whether you are safe, settled, confident, or unstable. This transmission happens beneath words, beneath intention, beneath effort. You may believe you are hiding anxiety, insecurity, or internal conflict, but the body does not hide, it signals. And those signals are read instinctively, especially in intimate relationships. The nervous system governs tone of voice, eye contact, timing, posture, and micro reactions. A man who is internally calm speaks slower without trying. His movements are economical. His gaze is steady without being invasive. He does not rush to fill silence. He does not overreact to emotional shifts. These qualities are not learned behaviors. They are byproducts of regulation. When the nervous system is regulated, presence becomes magnetic without effort. When it is not, the opposite happens. Words speed up, explanations pile on, laughter becomes nervous. Touch becomes either hesitant or overly eager. Responses come too fast or too late. None of these behaviors are inherently wrong, but together they paint a picture of internal unrest. And unrest is felt as weakness, not morally, but energetically. Many men think attraction is about confidence as a performance. They practice lines, posture, dominance cues. But confidence that is not rooted in nervous system regulation collapses under pressure. The moment uncertainty appears, the mask slips. The body reveals the truth. And because relationships involve emotional unpredictability, pressure is inevitable. What matters is not how you act when things are smooth, but how your nervous system responds when they are not. An anxious nervous system seeks control. It wants reassurance. It wants certainty. It wants immediate resolution. This is why some men push for clarity too early, define relationships prematurely, or react strongly to perceived distance. These behaviors are attempts to calm internal discomfort, not expressions of genuine desire, and that motive is felt. A regulated nervous system does the opposite. It allows uncertainty without spiraling. It allows emotional space without interpreting it as danger. It allows desire without clinging to outcome. That tolerance creates safety, and safety is the foundation upon which attraction can grow rather than collapse. This is also why self-work outside relationships matters more than techniques inside them. A man who trains his body, disciplines his habits, manages stress, and confronts his fears builds nervous system resilience. He becomes harder to shake, not emotionally numb, but emotionally stable. That stability translates directly into presence. Presence is what people respond to most deeply. You can say very little and still be felt strongly if your nervous system is settled. Conversely, you can say everything perfectly and still feel off if your system is dysregulated. This is why some men are attractive without trying and others struggle despite effort. The difference is internal coherence. Another overlooked aspect is that nervous systems synchronize. In close relationships, emotional states transfer. A dysregulated man pulls the dynamic into tension. A regulated man calms the field. Women often describe this as how he makes me feel, without being able to explain why. What they are responding to is nervous system influence, not conscious behavior. This is also why arguments escalate or dissolve depending on how a man holds himself. If he becomes reactive, defensive, or desperate, the system destabilizes further. If he remains grounded, the tension diffuses, not because he wins the argument, but because his nervous system sets the tone. Strength then is not dominance. It is regulation. It is the ability to stay present without collapsing or controlling. It is the ability to feel without flooding. And that ability is communicated continuously, whether you intend it or not. You are always teaching others how safe you are to be with by how regulated you are within yourself. One of the clearest ways weakness is sensed in a relationship is through emotional reactivity. Not emotion itself, but the lack of containment around it. There is a crucial difference between a man who feels deeply and a man who is governed by what he feels. The first is grounded. The second is dependent. And dependence is always felt as instability, even when it's subtle. Emotional reactivity shows up when a man's inner state rises and falls based on how his partner behaves. If she is warm, he feels confident. If she is distant, he feels anxious. If she is affectionate, he relaxes. If she pulls back, he spirals. Over time, this creates an invisible tether where his emotional balance depends on her responses. That tether is sensed long before it is articulated. This is not about being cold or detached. It is about emotional sovereignty. A man who lacks emotional sovereignty looks to his partner to regulate him. He needs reassurance to feel okay. He needs validation to feel solid. He needs constant emotional feedback to stay centered. That need leaks into his tone, his timing, his questions, and his reactions. Reactivity often disguises itself as care. Excessive checking in, over-communicating feelings, needing to resolve every emotional fluctuation immediately. These are often framed as emotional intelligence, but when they are driven by fear of loss rather than clarity, they create pressure. And pressure kills polarity. When a man reacts strongly to minor shifts, short replies, delayed texts, changes in mood, it signals that he is tracking her emotions more than his own direction. He becomes emotionally externally referenced. That means his internal stability is no longer self-generated. It is outsourced, and anything outsourced can be withdrawn. A grounded man notices changes but does not collapse under them. He allows space without interpreting it as rejection. He allows tension without rushing to neutralize it. He does not need every moment to confirm his worth. His emotional baseline is independent of the relationship, not dependent on it. This independence creates contrast. When a woman feels emotion strongly and sees that the man beside her remains steady without disengaging, something shifts. His presence becomes anchoring. He is no longer another emotional variable, he is the stabilizing force. That role is deeply attractive because it mirrors safety at a primal level. Emotional reactivity also reveals fear of abandonment. The more a man fears loss, the more he tries to control outcomes. He may seek guarantees, labels, constant affirmation, or emotional closure. But attraction does not grow in controlled environments. It grows in spacious ones. When a man can feel uncertainty without tightening, desire has room to breathe. When he can hear discomfort without defensiveness, trust deepens. When he can experience conflict without destabilizing, respect forms. These are not tactics, they are capacities. Another key point is that reactivity often escalates conflict unnecessarily. A reactive man turns small issues into emotional events. He personalizes moods. He over-explains. He defends prematurely. Each reaction adds weight to the interaction. Over time, the relationship feels heavy rather than alive. In contrast, emotional containment lightens the dynamic, not because issues are ignored, but because they are handled without emotional overflow. The man does not need to be right to feel okay. He does not need to be chosen to feel whole. That wholeness is already present. This is why inner work matters more than communication strategies. You cannot talk your way out of emotional dependency. It must be dissolved through building a life, identity, and nervous system that are not centered around one person. Purpose, discipline, solitude, and self-respect are what reduce reactivity, not clever words. Strength in relationships is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of it. When emotions move through you without owning you, they stop broadcasting weakness and start expressing depth. When you no longer need the relationship to stabilize you, you finally become someone who can lead it. Another way weakness is sensed, often without a single word spoken, is through a man's lack of direction. Purpose is not a motivational slogan, it is an energetic signal. When a man does not know where he is going, his presence feels diffuse. He occupies space, but he does not command it. And that absence of inner direction is felt immediately in close relationships. A man without direction unconsciously looks to the relationship to give his life meaning. He adjusts his schedule, his opinions, even his identity around the woman he is with. At first, this can look like devotion. Over time, it reveals emptiness. When a relationship becomes the center of a man's life rather than a complement to it, the polarity quietly erodes. Purpose creates gravity. It organizes a man's time, energy, and priorities. When purpose is missing, everything becomes negotiable. Plans change easily. Standards blur. Boundaries soften. This makes the man emotionally available, but energetically unstable. He is present, yet not anchored. Women don't just respond to how a man treats them. They respond to how he treats his own life. If his life lacks structure, discipline, or forward movement, the relationship begins to feel like a substitute for progress. That is not inspiring. It is burdensome, even if never consciously acknowledged. A man with direction does not need constant validation because his sense of worth is tied to movement, not approval. He wakes up with something to build, refine, or pursue. That pursuit creates rhythm. Rhythm creates certainty. Certainty creates safety. And safety is felt at a level far deeper than words. When a man lacks direction, conversations subtly revolve around feelings, problems, and reassurance. When a man has direction, conversations expand. There is momentum. There is forward pull. Even silence feels different. It is charged rather than empty. This does not require grand ambition or external success. Direction is internal. It may be physical mastery, creative output, spiritual discipline, or long-term skill building. What matters is that the man is oriented toward growth rather than stagnation, toward becoming rather than maintaining. A man who drifts sends a signal that he will eventually cling. Because without direction, attachment becomes identity. The relationship becomes the project. And when the relationship becomes the project, pressure replaces desire. Energetically, direction sharpens a man's presence. His words slow down. His decisions become cleaner. He is less reactive because his life is not revolving around one emotional center. He listens without losing himself. He engages without over-investing. This balance is deeply attractive because it suggests self-trust. Lack of direction also shows up as over-availability. A man with nothing pulling him forward will always be ready, always waiting, always accommodating. While availability is not a flaw, excess availability signals lack of priority. Desire grows in the presence of choice, not convenience. When a man chooses a woman from a full life, she feels chosen. When he chooses her because there is nothing else, she feels responsible. Attraction cannot survive responsibility. This is why developing purpose is not about impressing anyone. It is about stabilizing your internal axis. When your life has direction, your energy stops leaking outward. You stop seeking completion through another person. You become whole before you connect. And wholeness is always felt, even when nothing is said. When your life moves forward with or without approval, your presence becomes undeniable. One of the most powerful signals of weakness, often detected instantly and unconsciously, is incongruence. This is the gap between what a man says and what he actually does. On the surface, it looks harmless: big promises, emotional language, future talk, passionate declarations. But energetically, inconsistency creates static, and static kills attraction faster than silence ever could. A man who speaks confidently but acts uncertain sends mixed signals. His words move forward, but his behavior hesitates. He says he knows what he wants, yet his actions suggest doubt. He talks about standards, but tolerates what violates them. He claims independence, but reacts emotionally when challenged. This fracture is felt long before it is analyzed. Women don't evaluate consistency logically, they feel it somatically. When words and actions don't align, the nervous system does not relax. There's a subtle sense of unpredictability, not excitement, instability. And instability does not create desire, it creates vigilance. Energetic strength comes from alignment. When a man says less but means more, his presence becomes grounded. His yes carries weight. His no is clean. He doesn't over-explain, over-promise, or over-perform. He moves in one direction, internally and externally. Incongruence often comes from seeking approval. A man wants to appear confident, desirable, or emotionally evolved, so he speaks from an idealized version of himself rather than his current reality. He performs masculinity instead of embodying it. This performance is exhausting and it leaks. The body cannot fake alignment. Tone, timing, posture, and pacing reveal truth. When a man says he's calm but his energy is restless, the message doesn't land. When he says he's secure but his actions chase reassurance, the contradiction is obvious. Even silence exposes it. Consistency builds trust at a primal level, not because everything is predictable, but because behavior is reliable. A man who acts in accordance with his values, even when it costs him, radiates integrity. Integrity is not moral superiority, it is internal agreement. And internal agreement feels solid. When actions lag behind words, attraction turns into doubt. Doubt turns into testing. Testing turns into disengagement, not out of malice, but out of instinct. The nervous system pulls away from what feels unstable. A man who is aligned doesn't need to convince. He doesn't talk about confidence, he moves with it. He doesn't announce boundaries, he enforces them quietly. He doesn't explain his worth, he lives in a way that reflects it. This alignment also applies emotionally. Saying, "I'm fine," while suppressing resentment creates energetic tension. Over time, that tension becomes passive aggression, withdrawal, or sudden emotional spikes. Emotional congruence means being honest with yourself before being expressive with others. Alignment requires restraint. It requires slowing down speech to match action. It requires choosing clarity over validation. And it requires accepting that not everyone will like the version of you that is consistent, but the ones who do will respect you deeply. When words and actions match, your energy stops leaking. You no longer feel the need to manage perception. Your presence settles. Conversations become simpler. Decisions become easier. And attraction becomes a byproduct rather than a goal. Strength is not loud. It is coherent. And coherence is always felt. At the deepest level, what women sense as strength or weakness is not charm, looks, or even confidence. It is direction. A man without direction leaks energy. A man with purpose becomes anchored. And that anchor is felt immediately without a single word being spoken. Purpose is not a job title or a hustle slogan. It is the internal experience of moving toward something that matters to you. When a man wakes up with intention, his nervous system is regulated. His emotions are contained. His reactions are measured. He is not easily pulled into chaos because his attention already belongs somewhere else. When purpose is absent, relationships become the center of gravity. The woman becomes the emotional home, the motivation, the source of validation. That imbalance is felt instantly, not consciously judged, but registered. The energy feels heavy, needy, directionless. Even if the man is kind, attentive, and loyal, the lack of intermission creates a vacuum that drains attraction. Purpose creates polarity. When a man has something he is building, protecting, or mastering, he naturally leads himself, and someone who can lead himself does not need to control others. His calm comes from progress. His confidence comes from evidence. His presence carries weight because it is not searching for approval. This is why obsession kills desire. When a man revolves his schedule, emotions, and identity around a woman, his energy collapses inward. He becomes reactive. Small changes in her mood affect his state. His happiness fluctuates based on attention. That volatility is felt as weakness, not because caring is bad, but because self-abandonment is. Purpose stabilizes emotion. A man with direction does not chase reassurance because he is already fulfilled in motion. He enjoys connection, but he does not depend on it for meaning. His attraction comes from sharing his path, not replacing it. Women sense this through behavior patterns, how a man handles delays, rejection, silence, or disagreement. A purpose-led man does not spiral. He does not over-explain. He does not panic when things slow down. He trusts timing because his life continues moving forward regardless of one outcome. This does not mean emotional coldness. It means emotional containment. Feelings exist, but they are not dumped. Desire exists, but it is not desperate. Interest is expressed, but not chased. That balance creates respect. Purpose also sharpens boundaries. When time is valuable, it is protected. When energy is focused, it is not scattered. A man with direction says no easily, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. That clarity communicates self-worth without needing to announce it. Without purpose, a man negotiates his standards to avoid loss. With purpose, he honors his standards because he knows his path continues either way. That certainty is magnetic, not because it intimidates, but because it relaxes the nervous system of everyone around him. At an energetic level, direction creates grounding. Grounded men speak slower, move cleaner, listen fully. They are present because they are not internally fragmented. Their attention is not split between insecurity and desire. Purpose also prevents resentment. When a man sacrifices his goals for a relationship, resentment quietly builds. That resentment leaks through tone, withdrawal, or passive behavior. Women feel it even when they can't name it. Purpose keeps generosity clean because it is chosen, not traded. This is why the strongest masculine energy is self-generated. It does not demand. It does not plead. It does not perform. It simply moves forward. And when a man moves forward with intention, others naturally feel invited to walk beside him, not to carry him.